How are you guys doing? Woo! You guys spent some time outside today? No? Yes? Woo! It's Michigan. It could snow tomorrow. Like, you really should take advantage of these opportunities. Whoa.
Hey, same.
That's aggressive.
Whoever said that, I'm with you. Snow is better.
So we're going to get started. We have you for 50 minutes, and we would like to make sure we get you out of here in 50 minutes. I'm sure y'all might have homework or 1,000 chapters to read of God knows what, math, that kind of fun stuff. Welcome to college. Good to meet you. My name's Andy. I'm a counselor here on campus. I work in the Personal Counseling Center. It's the second floor of the Burkham Health Building over by the football field. Today we're going to talk to you, the title of our presentation is Relationship, Respect, and Resources, but what we're really talking about is communication, sexual violence, consent, and kind of all the important things that we think you should know, Raven and I, as well as some stuff that the state of Michigan and the federal government says we need to tell you. So my background is I've been working in the field of sexual violence since I was an undergraduate. I was a student advocate working at a crisis line. From there, I went and worked with the United States Navy and Marine Corps, doing bystander intervention training for the new enlisted all around the world. From there, I did Title IX work at Elma College when I finished my graduate degree, and then I've been here at Ferris for about 5 years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Raven. My title is unimportant, but basically I oversee all of the interpersonal violence prevention work on the Ferris campus. I, like Andy, have also started working in this field as an undergraduate student, also working on a student hotline. Prior to coming to Ferris, I worked at a domestic violence shelter working with families who are fleeing from violence. And I'm at Ferris doing this work with our Anti-Violence Alliance, which I will tell you more about as we go through the presentation.
So, first thing I want to do is set the tone. And a big part of the conversation today, like we said, is going to be about sex. Sexual violence, consent, those kinds of things. And what Raven and I have found is that a lot of people have had very different experiences when it comes to the talk. When you had that awkward conversation, perhaps with your parents, they sat you down, told you where babies came from, that kind of a thing. And so kind of how I conceptualize it is we kind of put it on a spectrum. So there's one side of that spectrum, maybe you had some very conservative parents. They told you get to have sex one time just to procreate, here's some condoms, good luck. That was it. Maybe you had those really liberal parents where you know exactly where in the Upper Peninsula you were conceived. You know exactly which track of the Michael Bublé album was playing, what constellations were overhead, what sexual position was going on. TMI, thanks mom and dad, I appreciate that scarring. I'll need counseling for sure. There's also kind of that in-between where I think a lot of people have had health class, like a gym teacher. These are STIs, don't have sex, you'll get pregnant, here's some condoms, good luck. I think our pop culture, I think of movies like Mean Girls. That's a really old movie, and I find that every year I use that example less and less people know what that is. But, the gym teacher in that movie, you will get chlamydia and you will die. Good luck to you. And so what we think is really important is to make sure at the end of this conversation today, everybody has the exact same level of knowledge when it comes to this. I apologize. Maybe some aspects of this conversation today you've already had and just going to be a review. Maybe all of it will be new. But a big piece of this is what we have found is that these conversations around sex and how babies are made very, very rarely talk about consent.
And so we promise that this is not going to be your average sex talk. We are not going to go real into depth about how you can catch STIs and what STIs are out there, how to prevent pregnancy, that sort of thing. We are going to walk you through some situations that you are very likely to experience, either yourselves or someone in your friend group, just by virtue of being a student on a college campus. It's important, we have to do this caveat, that Andy and I, of course, we speak from our limited perspectives. So our experiences, our life experiences, that's where we're coming from with this information. We all have different experiences, different levels of knowledge about these topics. So just understand that when we discuss these things, we're often talking from our own limited experiences. Okay, so to start us off, when we talk about relationships throughout this presentation, we want you to think very, very broadly about what that means. So I'm talking about relationships you have with your friends, with your roommates, the hookup you had last night, the couple that's been together forever, they're practically married at this point, your friend with benefits, maybe you're in a polyamorous relationship. Whatever relationship means to you, I want you to think about it in those terms. We're speaking broadly today.
And a big theme that we're going to discuss is communication within those relationships, talking about the important aspects of healthy communication, how to talk to one another, how to receive consent, give consent. We're going to talk a lot about how communication is the opposite of making assumptions.
All right, so we're gonna go through an activity. Sorry, I took that from you, buddy. We're gonna go through an activity. We are gonna walk you through some scenarios that you might encounter, you might see. If you think these scenarios are healthy, give us a thumbs up. If you think they're unhealthy, give us a thumbs down. If you're not sure, you can hang somewhere in the middle.
Healthy or unhealthy, your partner wants constant access to your phone and social media accounts. Toxic. Somebody yelled that in the first one too. Like, hell no, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So I think probably maybe everybody here is pretty much that's unhealthy. That's not okay. And I think the important aspect here is wants or demands that constant access. Raven and I would agree that's pretty unhealthy, especially because privacy is important. You know, just because you're in a relationship with someone doesn't mean that you owe them the code to your phone, passwords to your social media, those kinds of things. We do want to just say out loud, though, that sometimes in relationships, if both parties are okay with it, then that can be healthy. If everybody involved is like, yeah, that's okay. I want you to trust me. I want to build trust with you. I want to show you that I have nothing to hide. If everybody is on board with that kind of a thing, then we're going to say that that can be healthy in that situation.
All right, your partner is honest with you when you've hurt their feelings. Healthy or unhealthy? Good, yeah, this is definitely healthy, right? So we talk a lot about, like, sometimes we're having a bad day, we're just in a cranky mood, and we say some things that are hurtful to our partners. The fact that they feel comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, that was not okay with me, that hurt my feelings, that's a sign of a healthy relationship. It's good when, one, they feel comfortable talking to you about difficult things, and two, if you're able to take accountability and acknowledge, like, yeah, I'm having a bad day, I did not mean to say that, I'm sorry.
Healthy or unhealthy, your partner guilts you when you want to hang out with friends. Yeah, so I think that one's probably a little bit more straightforward. We're going to talk a little bit about domestic violence relationships and some of the dynamics that happen within those relationships. And something like this is pretty common. You can't go hang out with those people. I want you to hang out with me. Obviously, you don't love me if you want to go spend time with other people, that kind of a thing. And so in a situation like that, if your partner's telling you you can't go hang out with others or make new friends, that sounds pretty problematic.
Your partner pays for the date.
Hell yeah.
Okay, I've got some enthusiastic yeses and some kind of not sures. Okay, so yeah, that's a good point. So I think for this one, it can depend. So if, for instance, you're in the type of relationship where one person's always paying, you've talked about that, both of you are comfortable with that dynamic, sure, that is healthy. If we're talking about a situation where someone is always paying for the date and they start to feel like this is kind of a burden for them, then you could be getting into some unhealthy territory and probably need to talk that out. Where we can get into some tricky situations are, let's say your partner pays for dinner, and then that night they're like, well, I bought dinner, so you have to have sex with me tonight as like repayment, right? That is not healthy. They're trying to coerce you into sexual contact just because they bought dinner. So if someone's using that kind of like financial leverage over you, that can be a sign of an unhealthy relationship dynamic.
Healthy or unhealthy, your partner blocks your exit during an argument. Yeah. This one's pretty straightforward. This is a pretty aggressive posturing, body language, that kind of a thing. And so in any situation, not letting someone leave a room or leave a space, borderline illegal depending on the situation. And so we would definitely say that this would be an unhealthy relationship or a healthy thing.
Okay, so next slide, we have some very specific policy definitions that we are required to read to you verbatim, so apologies in advance.
The Ferris policy on dating violence and domestic violence. Violence by a person who has been in a romantic or intimate relationship with the victim, whether there was such relationship, will be gauged by its length, type, frequency, and frequency of interaction. Violence committed by the victim's current or former spouse, current or former cohabitant, or a person similarly situated under domestic or family violence law, or anyone else protected under Michigan domestic violence laws. Again, we apologize. We are literally required to read that to you verbatim. What does that mean? Basically, the relationship is what needs to be established if this policy was broken, and the relationship is established by time spent together and frequency of interaction. Any kind of violence that takes place between those people within that relationship is going to be a violation of Ferris policy.
Okay, next one. Your partner insists that you don't love them unless you send them nudes. Healthy or unhealthy? Yeah, good. definitely unhealthy. So if someone is pressuring you to do something that you're not comfortable with, then we would call that unhealthy for sure. Especially if they're trying to manipulate you into doing something that you're not comfortable with by saying, well, you don't really love me unless, that's when we're talking about something that could be very unhealthy.
There's a lot of nudes being sent around, it sounds like. Everybody's murmuring. That's like, yeah, nudes. It must be a thing. Healthy or unhealthy, your partner tells all their friends how lucky they are to be with you. Wholesome. Aw, super sweet. Sounds kind of maybe. You know, I got some like thumbs up over here. I got some thumbs kind of in the middle. I would say it depends. You know, as an example, if you're like bragging about how lucky you are to have met your partner and that you've never been happier in your whole life, and your friend you're telling this to literally just had their heart broken and they were just dumped and they're sobbing in front of you, it makes you kind of an asshole. That's their problem. Okay, heartless, gotcha. Cutthroat.
Wow, that's cold.
But I would say, depending on the friendship and depending on kind of the understanding and the dynamic within that group of friends, this could be something that would be totally healthy. The only little caveat I would want to bring up is make sure the person that you're talking about, make sure your partner is comfortable with you sharing information about your relationship with somebody else.
All right, your partner brags about your sex life with their friends. Healthy or unhealthy? Yeah. Okay. Seeing lots of thumbs down here. Yes, so we would say this is not a cool thing to do. It's totally normal to want to talk about your relationship with your friends, right? Like we ask our friends for advice, we vent about things that our partner's doing that bugs us. But the context of this one is just kind of making it feel that maybe you as the partner doesn't know that your partner's bragging about intimate details of your relationship with people that you may or may not know. So again, we've talked a lot in this presentation about communication and the importance of having open communication. So for a situation like this, you want to make sure that everybody involved is comfortable with you disclosing details or not to other people.
Healthy or unhealthy, your partner insists that you have sex even when you aren't in the mood. Mostly thumbs down. And we would agree. What we're talking about here can be considered coercion. You know, if you are pressuring your partner to have sex with you and they're not in the mood, that can be a pretty unhealthy dynamic. And so we would encourage, if the person isn't in the mood, talk about the future. Talk about other things you can do together. And maybe you'll have sex in the future. Forcing or pressuring someone to have sex with you, pretty unhealthy.
There we go. All right, another policy definition. Sexual violence is a term covering various forms of non-consensual sexual activity, contact, or exploitation. The university recognizes a number of different acts that fall into the category of sexual violence, including rape, fondling, sexual assault, sexual battery, sexual abuse, and sexual exploitation. All acts of sexual violence are prohibited under Title IX gender discrimination law and by Ferris State University. So essentially what this is saying is that when you come to a presentation, for instance, by the Anti-Violence Alliance, and we talk about sexual violence or sexual assault, we use that as an umbrella term to cover everything from inappropriate sexual touching all the way and inclusive of rape. Non-consensual sexual contact includes an intentional touching of the breasts, buttocks, groin, or genitals, whether clothed or unclothed, or intentionally touching another with any of these body parts, or making an individual touch another person or themselves with or on any of these body parts without consent. So here we're talking about you don't have consent in this situation. You are either rubbing up on someone or making someone rub up on you, and they have not agreed to do that. That is a violation of our policy. Non-consensual sexual activity includes penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus with any body part or object, or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person without consent. So again here, if you don't have consent and you are penetrating someone or you're forcing them to be penetrated by you without consent, that is a violation of policy. Sexual exploitation is knowingly committing non-consensual abuse or exploitation of another person's sexuality for the purpose of sexual gratification, financial gain, personal benefit or advantage, or any other non-legitimate purpose. So here we're talking about things like if someone took a nude photo of you without your consent and either kept that for themselves or like posted it to other people, showed other people that image that was taken of you without your consent, that is also a violation of policy.
Healthy or unhealthy, your partner asks you to share your location so they can see where you are.
Seen a lot of
It
maybes.
depends, sometimes healthy, sometimes unhealthy. I would actually agree with whoever over here said it depends, because if someone is demanding to know your location 24 hours a day and you're not okay with that, that seems pretty unhealthy. That seems that it's definitely not okay. But I would say in a situation like, if Raven and I are friends and Raven, can I share my location with you so I can know that, I got home safe after a late night class, or you're going out on a date for the first time and you want to make sure that you got home all right. You want someone to be able to kind of check in on you. It's basically, the point is that this can be a healthy thing. It can kind of bring security to people as long as everybody involved is okay with this agreement. Sorry again for having to read these painful policies. Stalking, a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear for his, her, or others' safety, or to suffer substantial emotional distress. A course of conduct means 2 or more acts, including but not limited to acts in which the stalker directly, indirectly, or through third parties by any action, method, device, or means follows, monitors, observes, surveils, threatens, or communicates to or about a person, or interferes with a person's property. That one's really wordy. This is what we want you to kind of take from this one. First, it's a course of behavior that would make a reasonable person feel uncomfortable. If actions or behaviors are going on that would make a reasonable person feel uncomfortable, we're starting to talk about a possible policy violation, very well stalking. The other thing we want to highlight with this is, I know a lot of people may use the term Facebook stalking, stalked you on the internet, that kind of a thing. And while that's probably almost always said in a kind of a joking manner, Ferris policy does cover electronic stalking. A person can be stalked and surveilled via the internet, social media, those kinds of things, and this is included in the policy, just so you're aware.
All right, healthy or unhealthy? Your partner pauses mid-hookup and asks if you're okay. Good? Okay, yes. So we would say...
Is that like new?
We would say that this is an example of a healthy relationship dynamic. So again, we're going back to open and honest communication, checking in with someone to make sure that you're all on the same page, you're all in agreement about what is going on. That's a very healthy and good thing to do.
Okay, so we have a couple different videos throughout our presentation as well. This one kind of touches on themes that you're going to see a lot in domestic violence. Afterwards, we're going to kind of talk about some of the things that you might hear.
Because I love you. I want to be your only guy.
Because I love you, skip class with me. Let's stay in bed today.
Because I love you, I just want to be with you so freaking much.
Because I love you.
I waited for you after Chem Lab.
You were walking with Mark?
Because I love you.
You shouldn't be hanging out with that dude.
You should know how dumb that makes me look.
I don't care if she's your lab partner.
Why do you have texts from him?
Because I love you. This number,
Delete.
Because I love you. This Jason number?
delete.
And Ben,
Delete.
because I love you, I should smash your phone.
I'll let you give me your password instead.
Because I love you.
I will check your texts every day.
You got lucky. Because I love you. Because I love you.
You think it's okay.
Because I love you. You understand.
Because I love you. You stopped talking to your classmates.
And you feel completely alone.
Because I love you. That's not love.
No one usually claps for that video, so good on you all. Statistically speaking, I know there are people in this room here who have experienced a domestic violence relationship. And I just want you to keep that in mind as we start talking about some of these heavier topics, because there are literally people in this room that have been impacted by this, either directly or they come from a situation in which they're either escaping, maybe their parents in a domestic violence relationship. And so we take this really seriously. And so we're wondering, what were some of the themes that you heard there? What were some of kind of the big things that stand out to you that you know are pretty common in domestic violence relationships? Just feel free to shout them out. Because I love you. Take your phone. Going through your texts, deleting contacts, looking at messages, threatening to damage property, destroying your phone, smash your phone, that kind of a thing. Thank you. What is something else that you heard? Stop being friends with them. Yep. We talked about isolation. We talked about, you're not allowed to hang out with this person or that person. You can only hang out with me. This guy's got his hand up. Skip class with me. Pressuring somebody. No one's said that yet. Good. Thank you. Good on you. Pressuring that person to spend more time with them. Skip class. It's not that important. It's not that big a deal. The one that I really like to highlight from this video is near the end, a really common thing that happens in domestic violence relationships that I hear a lot in the counseling center, but very rarely hear in the media, the news cycles, hear people talk about, is how survivors are going to minimize this behavior. They're basically going to say, it's okay they were drunk. It's okay, they just made a mistake. It's okay, they're not going to do it again. And that can be a really, really dangerous and a really, really heartbreaking thing because they are stuck in this cycle where they can't get out of because they're in love. And it can be a really dangerous thing.
Okay, so we're going to move a little bit past relationships to talk about respect and how we can show that for one another. So again, we're going back to communication here. So how basically do you tell someone what you want or how you're feeling in a given situation? So communication should always be honest about your boundaries and your expectations. And when I'm talking about boundaries, I mean, of course, yes, I'm talking about boundaries in the bedroom, right? So what are you willing or not willing to do sexually? I'm also talking about boundaries within the context of your relationship more broadly. So what are your boundaries for, let's say, text messaging? Maybe I am not going to respond to your texts while I'm in class or while I'm at practice. Being able to communicate that with your partner so they know what to expect from you. And then being honest about your expectations as well. So if I do text you, my expectation is that you are going to respond in a certain amount of time, right? So maybe it's not right that moment when you're in class, but hopefully by the end of the day, right? So being able to express that and talk about that with your partner.
The next aspect of healthy communication is just being aware of time and place. And I usually use a bad joke to kind of illustrate this. Let's say, for example, that you're going to Bible study and, like half the church is there. Chances are you're not going to talk with your partner about which sex acts you're going to perform on them later in the evening, right in front of the pastor, God, and all the rest of the congregation. Be kind of awkward. Time and place is going to be a really important aspect of healthy communication. It's important to communicate, hey, can we have this conversation later at a more appropriate time? You can set up times to have these kinds of conversations and talk to one another. Pillow talk as an example. The other one is clarity. What happens a lot in relationships that have been together, people who've been together for a long time, is sometimes they develop kind of a shorthand. They can communicate a lot of information with each other in just a short phrase. So let's say, for example, the way I communicate with my partner that I'm interested in having sex with them is, man, I could really go for some Mexican food. That's really great because all parties involved understand what the hell I'm trying to say. But if I go to the bar and tell the random person that I meet, like, hey, I'm really interested in some Mexican food, they're going to be like, yeah, I like Taco Bell too. You want to go afterwards? They don't understand what I'm trying to say. And so a really important aspect in healthy communication is making sure that you're being clear and you're being understood.
All right, another important aspect is that you're open-minded. So within the context of your relationship, it should be a judgment-free zone. So if you're saying, could be something as innocuous of like, I hate peanut butter. Maybe your partner really loves peanut butter. That's okay. They shouldn't be making fun of you about that. They shouldn't be making you feel ashamed or embarrassed because you don't like something they like, whatever the context is. You don't owe your partner an explanation for something. So let's say maybe in a past relationship, someone really hurt you in a very specific way. And so because of that past trauma, there are very specific things that you don't like in your relationship. Maybe, for instance, you really don't like it when someone raises their voice at you. So you can tell that to your partner and say, hey, it makes me uncomfortable when someone raises their voice to me without needing or being required to explain why that is. You don't have to go into all of this past explanation and rationale for why that's important to you unless you feel comfortable doing so. And then finally, make sure that you also know what you want in a given situation. How many of us have been in a situation where we're with our partner or someone and we're trying to figure out what we're going to eat for dinner? And you say, what do you want for dinner? And their response is, I don't care or I don't know, but also no to every single thing that you suggest, right? That is so frustrating. So it's important to make sure that you are also aware and are able to communicate what it is that you want.
The last aspect we like to talk about is just being receptive. Like Raven said, you don't owe anyone an explanation, and it's not your place to question their explanation. It's not your place to try to change their mind or coerce them, force them, trying to encourage them to change their mind. Listen to what they have to say. They're setting their boundaries. They're setting their expectations. Respect that. Listen to them. Find compromise. Being open and receptive to what your partner is saying and what they want is showing respect and healthy communication.
All right, so Andy and I are going to model some consent practices for you, and we will ask you to identify the elements of consent that you see.
Hey, Raven, can I get a high five?
Hell yeah. Woo!
Nice. Did Raven consent to that high five? Why?
How do you know?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
What else? She ran at me, yes.
Right? Yep.
She was engaged, yes. What else? Hell yeah again. What else?
Yeah.
Joy.
I showed joy.
Yes.
Yep.
Excitement. Raven knew what a high five was. She understood what I was asking for. And also, Raven could have changed her mind at any time. Raven could have came in for a high five and was like, ooh, bro, you haven't washed your hand for a while. Changed my mind. Taking it back. She absolutely consented to that high five. Scenario number 2. Hey, Raven, can I get a high five?
No.
Whoa, why? Just
I mean,
come
I'm
here,
just
give me a
not
high five.
feeling it. Just not
Dude,
feeling
you're
it.
gonna leave me hanging in front of all these people? You're a really shitty friend. Raven, just come and slap my hand. What's wrong with you? Come on. Woo!
All right, did I consent to that high five? How do you know?
Not
I
feeling
said
it.
not feeling it, yep. What else?
We appreciate all the added pressure that you also added on Raven for there. Also talking about coercion and such. How do you know Raven did not consent? Body language.
Body language?
Sadness. Unenthusiastic. Peer pressure. Yes.
Good.
Perfect. So absolutely, we would say in the second scenario, Raven was coerced by myself. You're a bad friend. You're going to leave me hanging in front of all these people. And then you all were great. Boo! Raven sucks. Boo!
You
Slap
all
his hand.
ganged up on me, and I felt pressured to give him a high five when I didn't want to.
That's not consent. So consent is literally the most important aspect of our conversation today. And so we're going to give it or show you consent in a lot of different ways. So this is a video. It's an older one. You may have seen it before, but it's going to liken consent to drinking tea.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea. Thank you. Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you could make them a cup of tea or not, but be aware they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important part, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you are entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say no thank you, then don't make them tea. At all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, yes, please. That's kind of you. And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time that it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind. And you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea. And they can't answer the question, do you want tea? Because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea. And they said yes. But in the time it took you to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down. Make sure the unconscious person is safe. And this is the important part again. Don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they're safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it going, but you wanted tea last week. Or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, but you wanted tea last night. But if you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you're able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand it when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea.
Okay, so continuing our conversation about consent, I like to use this handy little acronym, FRIES, to talk about consent. So consent is always, or should always be, freely given, meaning that you are making a free and open choice to consent to an activity or not. What I like to say is if you have to choose between saying yes and some sort of consequence, whether that's a fight, an argument, being shamed, then you're not actually consenting because your yes is not freely given. Consent, like we talked about, is reversible. So at any point, you can change your mind. You're like, I am no longer into this. Like, I want to stop. That is 100% okay. Consent is informed, meaning, again, like we said, you know exactly what it is that you are consenting to. When Andy said I asked for a high five, I knew he meant high five. I knew he did not mean hug, right? So if I went in for a high five and he tried to give me a hug, I didn't consent to that. That would not have been okay. Consent is always enthusiastic, so you're super into whatever is going on, and it is specific. So you are consenting to a specific activity at a specific moment. If that activity changes, if the time changes, right? So like you consented yesterday, you consented last night, doesn't mean you have consented for all time. Just because you've consented to one type of activity does not mean you have consented to everything. Consent can never be achieved if it is achieved through any type of force, so physical force, any sort of pressure that you're putting on someone to say yes, or through a threat. So again, if you are choosing between saying yes and facing some sort of consequence, that is not consent. Same thing with deception. So how many of you have heard of stealthing? Anyone know what that term means? No? It's shocking. Most people do. Okay, so stealthing is when, let's say you have consented to have sex with someone and they said they're going to wear a condom. At some point during intercourse, they take that condom off without you knowing. That is stealthing. That is illegal. That is not consent. Why? Because you consented to have sex with someone with a condom, specific. You did not consent to have sex with them without a condom on. And then finally, of course, consent is never assumed, and you cannot consent if you're under any sort of intimidation. So it is on the responsibility of you as the initiator of the sexual activity to make sure that there is consent in that situation.
This is our last policy read, and again, we appreciate you putting up with us. Consent to engage in sexual activity must demonstrate that it meets the following 4 components. 1, informed. 2, freely and actively given. 3, mutually understandable words or actions. 4, indicating a clear agreement to engage in sexual contact of any kind. It is the responsibility of the person who wants to engage in sexual activity to make sure that they received consent from any person or persons involved. If an individual initiating sexual activity is not sure if they have received consent, they have an obligation to seek additional clarification. We talked a lot about consent, so really the most important aspect of this policy is it is on the person seeking to engage in the sexual activity to ensure they have consent. When we talked about that healthy and unhealthy, when Raven talked about, they stop and check in with your partner mid-hookup, that would be an example of this, is making sure that what's going on, everybody involved is okay with that.
Okay, so when I talk about someone being a bystander, what usually comes to mind? Just shout it out. Someone's a bystander. Watching? Someone says, I can't hear you. Standing by. Yeah, bystander stands by. It's kind of this idea, right? Like we're just kicking back, we're watching something that's happening, not my problem, not my business, I'm not gonna get involved. We want to change the conversation a bit and talk about what it means to be a pro-social bystander. So showing respect for other people by stepping up to take action in a given situation. Is this where we do it? I forgot.
Video.
This one? Oh.
So this is a parody video from College Humor, and it's just going to highlight a lot of the things we hear around bystander behavior, sexual assault, those kinds of things.
Team versus team.
That's as good as it gets.
Oh man, I've never had more fun my whole life.
Daddy's had a bear. I'm gonna go to another one, Dad.
This your card?
No, Lamorne, stop doing magic. You're not good at it.
Guys! Oh, dude! There's a bear in your other room here.
What? Oh, that's just a big, angry, hungry bear. Just pretend it's not there.
Oh, really? Yeah. Man, it'll just go away? What are you talking about?
No, I don't think it's going anywhere, but I don't know what to do about it, so I just ignore it.
So it's not dangerous, right?
Define dangerous. It's a bear. But, you know, it's not gonna eat all of us. It only eats like 1 in 5s. I said only 1 in 5, so we're fine.
That's a lot, man.
That means one of us is gonna be eaten.
Statistically. That doesn't mean 1 of us. It means 1 in 5 people getting
You're doing something about this, man.
Hey, what do you want me to do about it? You guys know the old saying, bears will be bears.
That's not a saying.
Lamorne, a bear will be a bear, so...
You can't just blame the bear, not when it's attacking 20% of the people who come here.
20%? I said 1 in 5.
Yes, that's 20%.
And no, it isn't. It's 1 in 5, you math nerd. Let's pile on this guy.
Dude, you gotta get rid of this thing. Or at least warn us that there is a bear in the other room, man. We gotta look out for each other. What are you doing?
Hey, what happens between you guys and the bear is none of my business.
Wait, how is this none of your business, man? 1 in 5 people are gonna get attacked by this bear!
You're overreacting. The bear's not gonna eat all of us. It'll be less than a quarter of us.
None of us should die!
And it affects us all, Jake. 1 in 5. How can you ignore something so important? How can I protect your friend? 1 in 5, 1 in 5.
So the statistics we like to use a lot when Raven and I do education is 1 in 5 women and 1 in 8 men will experience some form of sexual violence sometime in their lifetime. And so this was just a parody kind of touching on a lot of the most common things we hear around sexual violence. I'm wondering, can some of you shout out some of the things you heard that you may have heard before in other contexts? What was that? Bears will be bears, is that what you said? And what are they referring to? Boys will be boys, exactly. And for those of you who have never heard that, boys will be boys is something that people use or say to kind of dismiss perpetrators from assaulting others. They basically say, oh, this is normal behavior for men. We should expect it from them. It's really on the survivor, on the victim, to make sure they keep themselves safe. And I would say that that's something that really bothers me because it's basically just saying that all men are always going to be expected to hurt other people, and we need to put the responsibility on the person being hurt to keep themselves safe. What else did you guys hear? 1 in 5, so yep, there's the statistic we talk about a lot. Some of the other things we heard in there is I don't know how to deal with this, so I'm just going to avoid it. What's between you and the bear is none of my business. We hear that a lot when it comes to, again, DV relationships. I'm not in their relationship. I don't know what's going on. It's not my business. I'm not going to get involved. And so we just think I don't want to deal with this problem that I hit them all. So we really want to use that and kind of transition into talking about being a pro-social bystander, because really respecting others and looking out for one another is something that we take very seriously here. This is our community, and it's all of our responsibility to keep each other safe. And so we don't want to send you out there without any tools. That would be pretty unfair of us to say, go be pro-social bystanders, and you're like, what the hell is that? How do I do that? Raven and I want to teach you how to be pro-social bystanders, very simply. So we're going to give you 5 tools. We call them the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. And we find that the best way to kind of introduce these concepts is with an actual scenario. And so let's say, for example, after tonight, we're all headed to like the biggest party on campus. It's gonna be a rager. I got a disco ball in the back. It's gonna be awesome. And for whatever reason, all of you overhear me, but not Raven, say, I'm gonna get Raven so drunk tonight, there is no way she's gonna turn me down. I'm getting laid for sure. Boo, you suck, Andy, you dick, blur. Yeah, that's a really shitty thing to say, and it should upset all of you that I would want to do that. That's step one, be upset. Now we're going to give you the different kinds of ways to intervene, and we would love to hear some ideas that you might have and what you could do in that situation.
All right, so the first technique is called a direct approach. So what might that look like in the context of this scenario? Walk up and say something to who? Yup, what would you say? Tell his ass chill out.
Perfect.
Good, excellent. Yeah, so a direct approach is when you are directly calling out the behavior as problematic. Andy, cut it out, that's not cool, we don't do that.
Next one we want to talk about is delegate. What would be an example of delegating an intervention in that situation? Yeah, get somebody else. Go get one of Andy's friends. Go get somebody else who might feel comfortable. We use delegate as an intervention because maybe you might not feel comfortable coming up and confronting me directly, and that's okay. We want to make sure that however you are going to intervene in the situation, you feel safe in doing so. And so I'm going to guess none of you are over the age of 21, but if you're at a bar in that situation, go tell the bartender. Go tell a bouncer. You know, a lot of the parties on campus have security there, have sober people there that are there just to make sure they're looking out for people. Go tell one of them. Delegating as an intervention is saying, I don't feel safe being the person that comes up and confronts Andy directly, but I am going to take responsibility in this situation and get someone else to help me intervene.
All right, what about a distract technique? What might that look like?
Maybe try taking him to a different party instead.
Yep, so try and get Andy out of the situation and away from me. What else could you do to distract in that scenario? Okay, who? Me or him? Me. So act like you know me and do what? Yep, get me out of there, right? Just be like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you in a minute. Come over here, let me talk to you. Good. So this one is my personal favorite to use in situations because the stakes are very, very low. So if I don't know anyone involved, I'm like, these people are strangers to me. I do not know who they are. I can still pretend to know me, right? So like you said, pretend to know me and say, Raven, your friends are looking for you. That's not true. I don't know that. He doesn't know that. But you've gotten me out of the situation in a very subtle way without drawing attention to the fact that Andy's kind of being a dick and maybe you're afraid of him in some way. It's also helpful to just cause a distraction. So maybe you come up and you like spill your drink on me. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me take you to the bathroom and clean you up. So again, you've gotten me out of that situation in a way without calling out Andy directly if you don't feel comfortable doing that.
The next one we like to talk about is document. And I'm going to guess most of you have a cell phone. And the cool thing about cell phones these days is they all have video cameras and pictures. And when we talk about document, we literally just mean maybe videotaping what's going on, maybe taking a picture of what's going on, maybe writing down who's involved in what was said. This could be something that really might be helpful after the fact. The next day, going to Raven and say, hey, Raven, I have this record of what happened. Is this something you might need? Something like that can be really important if Raven wanted to move forward with an investigation or wanted to report that. That could be a really good way to intervene and help Raven out in the situation, maybe after the fact.
All right, and then the final technique is a delay technique. This one can be a little tricky to understand, so I'm just going to explain it. So let's say after this party, you've overheard Andy say this thing. You're my roommate. I come to you and I say, hey, like something uncomfortable happened to me last night with Andy. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. So the delay technique is when you just provide support for me in that moment. So you say, what do you need right now? Are you feeling unsafe? Would you like to go talk to someone? We're going to give all of you a bunch of resources that you could point someone to in that sort of a situation. The delay technique is also really helpful for situations where the moment of harm happened like so fast, no one could have stopped it from happening. So the example I like to use for this is street harassment. Let's say you're walking down the road, someone in a car drives by and says something super inappropriate to someone who's like walking ahead of you. As a delay technique, you can go up to that person and say, hey, I just heard that. I saw what just happened. Are you okay? Do you want me to walk you to your next class? Is there someone I can call for you? Just validating that something harmful happened to them and that you are there as a supportive person.
So we appreciate you sticking with us. We have like 5 more minutes. This is the last couple of slides. The last thing we're going to talk about is resources here on campus. And so it could be helpful if you have a phone, you want to pull it out real quick and take a picture of this. This could just be good information to have kind of on your person. You can also go to fsuantiviolence.org. It's a website that the Anti-Violence Alliance runs that's separate from Ferris's website, so it doesn't have the same branding. It's something completely different. We've labeled the different groups up here, the different boxes, confidential, medical, and reporting. And the confidential thing is something that I really want to stress to you and make sure that you understand. Because of how Title IX policy is written, if you tell a Ferris employee, anyone who gets a Ferris paycheck, Raven, your RA, your faculty, your staff, your hall director, somebody who is mowing the lawn, anybody who is working for this school, if they become aware of a situation where sexual violence has happened, they are required to report that information to our Title IX coordinator, which is going to trigger a Title IX investigation, regardless if that survivor wants it to happen or not. Even if you are a friend who just tells it to somebody else, it didn't happen to you, but you know it happened to someone else, and you tell your RA is required to report that information. This is really important because it's the most important thing for a survivor to heal is having control and power back in that situation. And so we talk about confidential resources because I am not a mandated reporter on this campus. I'm a counselor, I have a counseling license. You can come talk to us at the counseling center and we have no obligation to report any information that you tell us. Even if it's secondhand, even if you're the friend of a survivor who just wants to come and process some of your own trauma because it's a really heavy thing, you can come and know that talking to us in our office, we have no responsibility to report anything. We can talk through options, we can talk through treatment, we can talk through the whole situation in a safe and controlled environment. WISE is our community-based advocacy group. So Mecosta County, we have WISE. It's just run by community members. Same thing, confidential. The Michigan Coalition, that's the state-based. So they run a text, hotline, chat. It's a wonderful resource that is available to all of you here because we live in this state. And then there's obviously always confidential national resources, rain.org, the hotline.org. There's a lot of really good stuff out there. And so again, that's really important thing. If you tell anybody, they're gonna have to report it, any employee. It's very important to make sure that you're talking to people you know is confidential.
And all of those confidential resources are also available to you if you are, let's say, the support person for someone. So let's say you are that friend, that roommate, and your friend or roommate has disclosed to you that something happened to them. They're in a DV relationship, they experienced sexual assault. You can also utilize those confidential resources to get some support for yourself, because hearing that about the people that are close to us is really hard. It's a lot to carry, and it can't be discounted that you also deserve support for hearing that information as well.
And then, sorry.
For medical resources, a SANE exam, sometimes called a rape kit exam, it's a forensic medical exam to collect evidence after a sexual assault has occurred. Those are available to you at our local hospital, Spectrum in Big Rapids, up to 120 hours or 5 days after an assault has occurred. It's important to note that these exams are, one, free, regardless of if you have insurance or not. They are confidential and they can be anonymous. So let's say if you're on your parents' insurance, they will never get a bill for the fact that you went and got a SANE exam done. It will never show up anywhere. You will not be billed for it. It is free. You do not have to report if or when you get a SANE exam. You have up to a year to decide what to do with that information. So you have some time to heal, some time to process, and decide what you want to do moving forward. They can also, for a SANE exam, even if it's after that 120-hour time limit, they can still provide supportive resources, get you connected with WISE, get you any testing that you might want for an STI or treatment, pregnancy tests, etc.
The last thing is just your reporting options on campus. Like we said, Caitlin Zies is our Title IX coordinator. Her office is over in the University Center. Student Conduct, Office of Student Conduct is another place you can go. They're also housed in the University Center. And finally, you can call the police. They will take a report, and it would be another avenue that you could pursue if that's something that you wanted.
All right, so this presentation is really meant to be a primer for you for the interpersonal violence prevention work that we do on campus. So Andy and I were both part of the Anti-Violence Alliance. We host a whole bunch of resources, events, workshops, trainings throughout the year on dating, domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. So check out our website for more information. October, next month, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so you'll see us out and about all over the place, really. So we'll have some workshops and trainings if you want more information or if you're interested in getting involved in our work. All right, thank you everyone for coming. Make sure before you leave, you check out with one of the card swipers so your attendance gets marked off.